is the Two Marketeers podcast, where hosts and marketing experts Sean Patrick and Lindsay Waugh seek to uncover what makes brands so powerful in how they impact modern society and culture.
Two Marketeers. They've got a podcast. The Two Marketeers podcast.
Let's just get right into it.
Okay, Sean Patrick. Hello, Marketeers. Welcome to another riveting episode.
I didn't bring my rivet gun.
No problem. I got it. Fine.
Right.
Okay, let's get into it.
Yes.
The idea for this episode came up because I have been seeing some disturbing headlines that I was sharing with Sean. And we were like, no wonder people struggle to work for companies sometimes. So we need to dive into this topic. So the headlines that I was seeing and have been seeing over the last couple of months is around large organizations starting to deprioritize CSR and DEI initiatives. So you see headlines like
Corporate social responsibility and diversity, equity, and inclusion, right?
Pardon me. Yes. So these would be initiatives, sometimes even departments, sometimes specific roles that are hired into big companies to champion these things like corporate social responsibility and diversity, equity, inclusion. So I've been seeing these headlines come up about how, like, in hard times, big companies laying off entire DEI departments, or we're seeing things like chief diversity officers being the biggest hires in 2022 and are now being like the first to be laid off, or seeing companies kind of deprioritizing purpose during hard times. So I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, we, since 2020, have made what I was led to believe some significant progress in companies championing things like CSR and forming DEI departments and hiring heads of diversity and putting goals against these initiatives and really making it something that's ingrained and a part of their values as they move forward and start to be more committed to things beyond profits. And now we're seeing kind of like streams of headlines of companies who are deprioritizing this and companies pushing back on initiatives like DEI and CSR.
Mm-hmm.
So we, as well, I won't speak for you, I'll speak for myself, as brand and business strategists, highly prioritize these types of initiatives. I would even say when we're developing brand strategy, we have almost like a checkbox as part of our strategy of what are we bringing forward around CSR and DEI? What are some of the initiatives we can recommend? How are we helping these companies to choose initiatives that are right for them and that they can authentically and genuinely champion? And how are we making sure that we're pushing our clients through strategy to focus on these types of initiatives alongside all of the other things that they are working on and that they're championing? But what I've been reading in some of these articles, even some new research from like Bain and Company, is that companies feel that they're struggling to even meet their existing commitments in like tough economic times and all that's going on in the political environment and all of these things, that they're almost feeling forced to start to deprioritize some of these things that are not in the short term impacting their sales and their performance. And This has gotten me up in arms. I am up in arms about these headlines. And so Sean and I have a lot of conversations around short-term impact and long-term brand building and building brands with purpose.
They're
and
fascinating conversations. Fascinating.
I knew that Sean would have a lot to say on this topic. And so I'm like, we need to speak about this because it's not okay. It is not okay that companies who can create a massive impact are starting to do less around sustainability and less around DEI, even under current economic and social and societal pressures. To me, it is not okay. And so I'm like, we need to be able to say something about this and have a conversation around it.
It's not okay.
It's not okay. Not okay.
So it's not okay. But I'm going to be really honest with you because, of course, Lindsay and I have our status meetings. We talk, one of us will propose an idea. Next thing you know, we're like, yeah, we'll just say what we just said for the last 20 minutes because it started a rant. And today I've done my yoga, I've done my cardio, I've had 2 coffees, and I'm like, you know what, Lindsay? Shame on us. Shame on you and me.
Why?
Because what the hell did we think was going to happen when companies were pretty much, most companies were forced to do in tough times, that they stopped doing it when the challenges, those specific challenges, like the Me Too movement, George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. We are so short term. And I say we as culture, you and I, our jobs and why we love doing our jobs is because we're not short term. It's about, we talked last week about freelance and why we did it. And Lindsay loves the newness and the novelty of always taking on different challenges. And it can be very, in particular, disheartening to us when, we get excited about new things. We look for the good. We see how, our job is to see the positive impact certain things can have in certain situations. I'm sadly disappointed, although not surprised.
Yeah.
But it's not okay. And so I look at it from the lens of business, and I look at it, not humanity, sorry, humanity, not today, business and brand. And if there is a fatal error happening, some of the shocking revelations around where, purpose cannot be a priority then don't have a brand, because the purpose of brand is long term. It's about your story, it's about your actions, it's about your values and your beliefs, and that takes a long time to change. It takes investment, not spend, right? It takes qualitative data, not quantitative. It takes, trial and error to really kind of say, don't give up, just figure out how you do it better. And really, 2 years?
Yeah.
And when you think of the cost to these organizations to do what they've clearly, it didn't affect the bottom line the way it was supposed to. And you know what, guys? I use this it just popped into my head. Instant gratification is just all that we have. And, it's indicative of our economy. It's indicative of voting and politics around the world, but one place in particular. If everything is just about how you're going to survive to the next quarter and show you can survive to the next 4 quarters, you're going to be sadly disappointed.
Yeah.
And have you experienced this firsthand? The idea that the things that mattered, the investments we've made or the trends can no longer apply to our business.
Yes. So I look at very progressive, interesting kind of challenger brands who are in commoditized industries like ice cream, like with Ben and Jerry's, like with them having such a strong stance on so many social, societal issues and not being afraid to talk about those things, to talk about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
I was doing an audit on some Google brands and a Google talking about how some of their products can help people gain more information. So even in very tough political environments, it can help educate people so that they can make educated choices and go to the polls with an educated vote and things like that. So I look at these brands who also may say we can't say anything that's going to rock the boat. It's yes, you can. Ben and Jerry's has built an entire brand that is loved throughout the world based on the things that they value outside of ice cream. And you can't tell me for a second that brand has seen no impact by championing these initiatives on their sales. And then when you ask about if I've seen this firsthand, yes, I've seen many brands talking about this is just not a time when we can champion purpose, or this is not a time when we, given our current climate, where we can use our voices in that way. And I have many reactions to that being bullshit. I think you have a responsibility.
You have
It
a
may not be
responsibility.
to jump into political conversations, but you have a responsibility to the world, to the people who work for you, to the clients that you work for, to do more for them and all of us than simply make money.
So that's the purpose argument. But you have a responsibility to continue what you committed to 18 months ago.
But these brands may also say, like, we never committed to changing the world. We just want to sell our product, is what we've committed to doing. And it's like, that's fine. But if you expect to be a brand that's valued by your clients and your employees a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, when you champion nothing around impact on society and helping people and helping the world, then I think you're going to be quickly left behind. And the biggest thing that I think we should talk about is that yesterday when we were speaking about this, you were talking about humanizing companies, and that's the role of brand. And I think developing yourselves in these ways enables humans to connect with human brands. It's not even just the clients that you work for. It's more so the people who work for you. Like, what are the things you are doing for the human workforce who gives everything to you and you give nothing in return? I think that's unacceptable.
That is a belief, right? You could have a very firm belief that the purpose of a brand, not a brand's purpose, the purpose of having a brand is humanizing a business, humanizing an entity that isn't human, but wants to do human good, because that's what humans do. We have if you follow, say, a Brene Brown way of thinking, is the one thing that makes humans human is our need to connect with other humans, right? And that is the whole purpose of a brand. Because imagine if the companies that say we're not doing that anymore were people in their community, right?
Yeah.
Say politicians, but even the guy down the street who said, hey, I'm going to do this thing for the community, and it's going to take 10 years, and it's all in, and then 2 years later say, you know what, it's not a priority anymore. Well, what's the impact of that as a part of a community, as part of a culture? And I think it's this dehumanization. You can be a company, you are a company. Choosing to be a brand that you control long-term success of that company is a very important decision, especially today, especially now when there's so much noise. And like Lindsay said, I think you made reference to, like, well, we're just not going to say anything right now. Well, you have to say something, because if you're not sharing the human aspect of what does this brand stand for? How does this impact my business? How do the people that care and love the brand that I work for, how are they feeling right now? And is there anything, what's the right thing to do to show them that we understand? For some people it's just fluff. To us, it's doctrine.
And I don't think it's about, there may be some things you feel like you can't say. Maybe politics isn't your shtick. It is Ben and Jerry's, and maybe it's not yours, but you have to figure out what your thing is that you can genuinely champion, that does more for your brand and your business than make money. And there are many things. And I understand that you can't do all things. I don't think you should do all things.
Nope.
I think you should find the things that you genuinely believe in and ingrain them in your brand to be doing more for people in the world than what you are doing. So I get that some things are off limits for sure. It doesn't mean that you can do nothing.
Yeah. We've talked about this other seasons and it's coming back, but a couple things, like, A brand is demonstrated not by what you say, but by how you act, right? It's not by words, but by actions. Story doing, not storytelling. The other one is that why purpose is so important, because brands take a long time to build. But without that purpose, that brand or company that 1 year decides that they're all about DEI, 2 years decides they're not, that's the person in the community who's a flake.
Yeah, performative. It's performative.
And when companies make this decision, they don't even know they're making a brand decision. They don't see the equity in their actions. Therefore, when those actions are undone or completely change direction, they don't see the impact. And to be quite honest, is if a company is measuring the more quantitative things and over a short time, they're never even going to know the mistakes they've made long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's so many great brands. There's so many great ways to do it. It's just we're too impatient.
Yeah, I think that is the thing too. There's a lot of brands in the news that are reversing things, which is not great, which is obviously why we're jumping on this. But there are a lot of brands also who are doing amazing things. So I think looking to them as examples is what we want to do. But even when I was reading one of these DEI articles, it was saying 43% of companies continue to maintain and promote quantitative time-bound DEI goals. And they were saying that as a good thing. They're like, 43% are still doing it. And I'm like, 43%? You've got to be kidding me. Like, that's less. This is a systemic problem that requires long-term investment for long-term gain.
Yeah.
And the betterment of society. And only 43% of businesses are continuing to prioritize this and work towards those goals. Like, you've got to be kidding me. So, I mean, let's look at those brands who are doing amazing things and see the success that they're having and help prove that these initiatives do have positive impacts on brand and business so that we can continue to champion those things. It's time to do better. Like, we have to do better than this.
Yeah. I mean, it's a general rule. Companies who appreciate the value of brand are the businesses that stand the test of time, right? There's been books written about it. What's that? Brands Built to Last and all these wonderful books. And the idea is that it's nothing new, but I will say this on the tail end of last week's where we talk about why we went freelance is I realize now after on this stretch being 10 years as a freelancer, I have been for 10 years consciously building my brand. It guides my decisions, doing this podcast, the topics we talk about, partnering with Lindsay. These are all things that I refer to as my story doing because they're things I love to do. But on the other hand, I don't do this podcast for money. God, we'd be such a failure. It'd be awful.
Supposed to make money off of this? Well, missed that status meeting.
Well, let's not kid ourselves. Anyways, it's just about I am living the life of a brand. And sometimes we talk about the freedom of it is actually the pride I have in the last 10 years isn't in my successes, it's in my endeavors. And those endeavors have been guided by the freedom I had to decide what my brand was going to be.
Yeah. I mean, that is freedom. Most certainly.
You know, like you were saying, Lindsay, how long have you been working for yourself now?
5 years.
Wow. Well, let's be honest. Lindsay's always been working for herself. People just didn't know it. Would you say you don't fall in line?
Sorry.
But I think bringing the two topics together is to say that I just don't think I would be able to continue to build my brand and do the things that build my story if I didn't have control of that. And maybe that's why we're so shocked by these headlines going, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You just did a 180 on something that was the most important topic and no one's talking about it.
Yeah. We will continue to champion brand purpose. We will continue to push the brands that we work for and with to be doing more for the world.
And we will continue to push how powerful a brand can be when people understand how to use it. When companies and the leaders of those companies understand the power a brand has and the equity it possesses for long-term success.
Yes. Boom. Thanks, Marketeers. Thanks, Sean, for letting me rant.
And Lindsay, thanks so much for having so much passion for the topic.
Of course. My pleasure. We will not stop.
Bye, Marketeers.
Have a great day, Marketeers. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Two Marketeers podcast. New episodes launch every 2 weeks.
Find the Two Marketeers podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you like to listen. And be sure to rate and subscribe.
Listen on our website, thetwomarketeers.ca, or you can ask Alexa to play the Two Marketeers podcast.
Want to keep in touch? Follow the Two Marketeers on LinkedIn or at Two Marketeers on TikTok. We've always got something to share.
This podcast is over.